And now we'll shift over. And Peter, we are up for a treat here, a real leader, well, all things 5G, many other things as well, but the 5G guy. Peter, please, take it away.
Thank you very much. It's amazing. First time in 805 days, I don't have to start with unmuting myself. Yes. During these 805 days, having not been able to travel, had numerous conversations with my mom. And she's always asking, very, very curious, how is it going with G5 in the US? We're working with 5G here. Now, but G5 is coming in Sweden. It got to a point where I said, I'm not coming home to Christmas unless you get the order right. We talk 5G. Fast forward 4 months later, I'm coming home. I have heard that she's been literally reading every single version of the equivalent to Wall Street Journal. Whenever there's 5G, call up the operators, hear what they have to say about it. To the point where my colleagues in Stockholm are saying, hey, is Linder calling here? Might that be your mom by any chance? She's calling here and asking questions about 5G. Why doesn't she call you? I come home and ask, out of all of these different conversations you've had, what is 5G all about? Yeah, you know, it's 4G, but it's faster. Okay, 4G and faster. So what does that mean? Yeah, I have absolutely no clue. And I think her reflections of what 5G is and what we can do about it is shared by many people. We see it as an evolution of something we already know about. So it's going to go faster, but we can't really relate to it, what it is. So what I'm trying to describe here, a little bit, 2 things that happened and 4 things that we think is big things that's coming along down the road here. And to give you a little bit of perspective so you can bring that back and take that into your business or whatever you're dealing with. So not limit yourself to seeing it as faster 4G, because it's so much more than that. The first thing we've done here in the United States, we've been at the forefront of building out 5G, essentially lighting up every single tower that we have in the country, that we used to have 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. We have lighting up those towers with 5G. And 5G comes in 3 different shapes. One which reach very far. So that version we've been busy building for the last 3 years, and we now reach more than 300 million Americans. That sounds really good, but it also, there's at least 30 million left. And if you think about America's 46 million in the rural America, there's almost 2/3 of the rural America that we doesn't reach yet. But we've gotten far out in terms of coverage. The second thing we've been doing, we've been building for capacity in urban areas so that we can do more things where there is a lot of people. It's a fundamentally different problem. We're trying to make sure that we can do everything we want to do there. That journey started later. So we are a little bit north of 200 million in reaching that. And this year is a very important investment year where we're putting in more and more of that kind of capacity in the network so we can start doing new things. The third thing we're doing, we're using something for exceptional capacity. Like when you think about a football stadium, light it up with all the floodlights that you can put there to play a game in the night. It's the equivalent of that, of 5G. So you can do a lot of more things in a very concentrated area. And we've been lighting up around 100 cities, or portions of 100 cities in that way. So these 3 things together is what 5G is all about. And you don't need to know all about this, but you need to know as much as you know about your car. When you go in and fill up on energy, you pay attention to what you fill it in. Either you do gas, or you do diesel, or you do electricity, and you kind of know that. The same thing for anyone dealing with 5G, working with the right version of 5G. Second thing, what do we use 5G for? How many 5G devices has been announced or do exist in the world today? Roughly 1,400 different. Out of those 1,400 devices, 700 are phones, so smartphones. If you bought a new phone over the last 2 years, it's very much likely a 5G phone. So that is the momentum and the anchor that's driving the build out of the network and what the networks are used for first. So mobile broadband, different shape and form. The second most important category of devices is for fixed wireless broadband. So where we go almost to your home and in the air the last bit. This is something we've done since 1G came in the 1980s, but it's always been a gigantic leap in performance and difference between the two. Now the wireless has come up here, so it's starting to become relevant to use it for fixed wireless applications. Last quarter, 53% of all net addition for broadband, fixed broadband, to people's homes in the US was fixed wireless, using 4G or 5G technology. So this is accelerating. So it's not only the 50% that's phones, there's another 20% that's fixed wireless as well right now. What is the remaining 30%? What else can you connect to a 5G network? Cars, 11 of those. They're coming into market 2024, right? There's 21 other categories of devices that are emerging right now that represent the last 30%. And the interesting thing is what we're going to see, how those applications start ingraining, getting traction in the market. Because we built a network right now. We have two strong applications that drive them out, the networks and the use of them. And then all the other ones can come and kind of piggybacking on top of that. Those two things has already happened. We have a big thing ahead of us. What role will 5G play in the digital divide? The digital divide is a pretty big problem and has been accentuated during the pandemic. 16 million students that don't have a device or broadband or both. 16 million out of 50 million students in America don't have that. The digital divide has put the spotlight on, we don't only need it for internet and surfing and for leisure purposes. It's been about work, it's been about home education, fundamental things. It's not only been a problem for kids, it's been a problem for teachers that don't have broadband at home. 8% of teachers didn't have that. And even if we have it at home, it doesn't really help. Because what if the kids has to go to grandma and grandpa? And if you didn't have broadband at home, it was not clear that your grandma and grandpa had it, rather the opposite. So what we're using 5G for in closing the digital divide is something we can't dig ourselves out of. Everybody says, oh, let's do fiber. Fiber takes a long, long time to get out there to everybody. Right now, we have 70% of fiber to big commercial buildings, growing at 5% per year. They will be home run before 2030. Small commercial buildings or residential buildings are more 15% penetrated today, growing at 1.5% and 2%. So even if we double the build out of fiber in the country, we'll not hit more than 50% by the end of the decade. So fixed wireless is going to play a role in that gap so that we can get out and close the digital divide for all Americans this decade. Something that's absolutely doable, but require a little bit out of the digging thinking. We can't dig ourselves out of that hole. Moving on from that one, we talk a little bit about what's going on. We talked about different industries here today, different industries that we can transform. 5G has a central role to play when we're saying where are areas where we need networks to drive and operate things more efficiently. You can go all the way. We built a new factory in Dallas. The first time in 20 years, we produce radios that goes up into the towers in America. Not a single 3G radio, not a single 4G radio was produced in the country, but we now started to produce 5G radios. What made it possible to move back production that before has been overseas? Was three things. The first one was automate the factory to a level where we can operate in a country with significantly higher labor rates. So a very, very high degree of automation, networks built in the factory, connecting all the different things in a totally different way than we've done in the past. Secondly, the green dimension of it, the factory is designed to, we built the factory in a green way, barely no waste. We're operating in it we collect rain from rain tanks, solar panels all over the place, and doing all kinds of different things to make that production as green as possible. The last most important piece, I believe, is that it's a factory that's attractive for our children to go and work in. They would never go and work in the grandpa's or our generation's factory jobs. So we have a way that we can actually point out the future in the manufacturing sector, allowing us to bring back a lot of the supply chain. The very same technology that we're using in building the network in the factory, you can say it's like, hey, we're supercharging one small geographical area. Same kind of thinking we apply in mines. So instead of having a person send them down in the mine an hour and a half in the morning, getting them back up an hour and a half in the evening, why don't we hire some person that's really good at playing video games, put them in a nice chair, and remotely operate a thing down in the mine? Or we can go all the way, we can look at the whole chain, warehouses, airports, seaports, all the way up until the mall, and the roads, and the rail transport in between. Each and every of these ones are areas where we're going to use 5G connectivity to improve and advance the economy. Anyone here read the book Snow Crash? Metaverse. A book written in 1992 about the futuristic vision of how a more digital world come into our lives, and where we live our lives with VR glasses, virtual reality glasses, and all kinds of crazy things. Very interesting book to read to see how close were they in their prediction 30 years ago to where we're coming to right now. A lot of that already exists, but our children, they have the large, like diving mask-sized glasses, VR glasses, and they're connected to a $2,000 computer next to them with the wire. So if they have a 20-foot wire, they can go 20 feet. But you're hooked up to that desktop computer. The evolution that's coming with 5G in that sense is about cutting that wire and moving that desktop to an Amazon or Microsoft or Google data center. All the capacity that's in that $3,000 computer that shows up on the Christmas wish list every year if you have a teenager, we move that to the data center, we cut it off here, and those glasses, you can now walk around with them and do totally different things. In addition to that, we take the majority of the functionality in those glasses and move it to the data center with high power connectivity, very high performance in the connections in between, so that they're more like swim glasses or these glasses here. Lighter, longer battery life, way more applicable. So this is the next big evolution on that whole metaverse, getting rid of the wire, moving most of the memory and processing and power out of the device itself. And that only works when you have a super good connection to them. Final bit is about the ecosystem development. We were in Denmark just here, and most of us grew up with these boxes. We got them when we had with Christmas, 40 pieces. You could build an ambulance or a little race car like this one. It was pretty straightforward to do it. This is what it is like to build applications in the 4G world. 4G world is pretty simple. You have a phone. Everybody's got phones. You don't need to worry about the device. They connect over 4G network. All traffic equal. Doesn't really matter if it's kids playing games or other more important bits that's going on the network. Everything is treated equally. And it goes to big data centers, a few in the country. If you go, biggest choice is, should we be in both app stores or just one? But it's very simple to develop innovations in that world. 5G is going to be more advanced. That's when you go and look for the speed champions or the technique or the more fancy things. You can create way more interesting things because you have a lot of more different pieces and a lot of more different pieces that you can combine together in very interesting ways. It's a lot tougher to do it. You might have to be 7 years rather than 4 years of experience, but the result is totally different. So what I see the 5G journey is taking us is to taking this step up, believing that you can do more things than just creating an app for a phone, as in terms of the innovation landscape, and drive that forward. This is what I'm fascinated about the future. And when you hear 5G, don't think it's about a thing that's going to solve the world. Think about 5G combined with IoT, combined with edge computing, combined with augmented reality, all these different technology. Because the power of combining them is to getting up to play with the really interesting boxes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, so much.